Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden is getting many of his ideas about energy and the environment from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the first-term U.S. representative from New York, who's known popularly as AOC. We thought it might be a good idea to get a different perspective on these issues from a different AOC, the Right AOC. That is the nickname of Amy O. Cooke, who is CEO of the John Locke Foundation. And Amy, you have been paying attention to the other AOC ever since she got on the national scene. And when it comes to energy and the environment, she's very wrong.
Well, Mitch, first of all, thank you for having me. And yes, I have, because energy and environmental policy was, or always has been, one of my policy loves. I was actually, before I came here, I directed the energy and environmental policy at the Independence Institute in Colorado. Colorado, of course, it was seventh largest energy producing states in the country. So it was a huge deal. Plus seemed a plethora of very active far left environmental groups. I'm starting to see similar groups move into North Carolina. So I might be picking this topic back up a little bit more. But to your point about AOC and the wrong AOC, she couldn't be more wrong on energy and environmental policy. The policies that she is espousing will not help with energy, nor will they keep the environment clean. Of course, she's famously known for her Green New Deal. Joe Biden introduced her as his energy policy advisor in May of this year. So she is going to be advising him on the campaign trail. Every single American should be worried about that. And I'll give you just a couple of reasons, but let me just share a couple of things first about what the Green New Deal would do. According to AOC, in 12 years, actually now it's less than that. Actually, it's by 2030, she wants the country to be at a net zero carbon emissions. Which means, no cars, no planes, no travel, no cows. So forget your nice juicy burger or your great steak. She's not going to allow that. But of course, I'm sure she'll have all of those things. It'll be for the rest of us. And this net zero Green New Deal is heavily reliant on wind and energy, these intermittent, unreliable sources. And there are really there are a whole bunch of problems with it. Cost, what it does to the environment. But three things to focus on right now. One is it's just an impossible standard. And then the other one is it will dramatically decrease our quality of life. And it also really shackles us to China. So what do I mean by those three things? So the first one is it's an impossible standard. Carbon is life. CO2 emissions, which she wants at net zero, it's what we exhale. I mean, you're literally talking about eliminating people. So it's an impossible standard. In the United States, by the way, what are we, about 16, 17 tons of carbon emissions per capita, I think was the last figure I saw. Now, here's what we do with that. We contribute roughly 25% of the world's GDP. We are incredibly efficient in creating wealth, creating a quality of life that people in many other countries want to enjoy as well. And AOC and this Green New Deal would destroy all of that. Because let me just give you an idea of what zero carbon emissions look like. Think of places like Chad.
If you even know where Chad is.
If you can find it on a map. No, the Congo. Even countries like Somalia and Afghanistan have some carbon emissions. In Chad, I looked it up actually, they're living on about $2 a day. That's about what their wages are. You can't get a cup of coffee here for $2 a day. I just don't think most Americans want to live like that. Their quality of life would be dramatically decreased. And carbon emissions, by the way, plants need carbon. We exhale it. Plants need it. That's how it's life. It is life. But this zero carbon emissions, you have to go to some places that have a very, very low quality of life to see what zero carbon emissions looks like. And again, remember, this is reliant on this intermittent, unreliable sources like wind and solar. And if you want to know what this transition is going to look like, look no further than California right now. We have heard that the West Coast is experiencing dramatic heat waves, and there have been rolling blackouts in California because they are heavily reliant, especially on solar. And as peak demand for solar drops late in the afternoon, early evening, people are getting home from work, or they might be home already. They're working from home. Air conditioning needs, the demand doesn't drop just because solar stops producing. Candle makers may have a market in California right now. And in fact, I saw this on Twitter last night. Michael Schellenberger, who is head of Environmental Progress, which is a think tank dedicated to improving the human condition globally, as well as providing safe, clean, affordable, reliable, abundant electricity. He tweeted at Kamala Harris last night, and it was very pointed. He said, "Hi, Kamala Harris. Michael Schellenberger here, Berkeley residents 3 days into a rolling blackout. Question, why should the country follow California's lead?" It's a legitimate question, especially if you're sweltering or sitting in 100-degree heat. That's a good question. Why should I not have access to affordable, reliable, clean, safe, abundant power? Not only that, California has some of the highest rates of electricity. So you have quality of life, an impossible standard. And the third one is China. I think we're all pretty clear on the fact that China is openly hostile to us. And yet China controls 95% of the world's supply of these things called rare earth elements. Rare earth elements are in everything from, your smartphone to the camera to the equipment we're using here today, your TV, your computer. They're in weapon systems. They're also used. There's a significant use in wind turbines and solar panels. They need those rare earth elements. The United States imports roughly 80% of its supply from China. Why? Because the same environmentalists who don't want us using any fossil fuels also won't let us extract rare earth elements here in the United States. So we have to import those elements. Now, you take those things, you take quality of life, dependence on China, and impossible standard, and you can throw in cost and everything else and what it's going to do to the American people. And you compare that to President Trump. And President Trump, even as he was campaigning, when he was candidate Trump, was saying, listen, we can develop our natural resources responsibly, and we can be energy independent and have clean air, clean water, be good stewards of our environment. It was never this mutually exclusive that you have to choose between the economy and the environment. You had to choose between your way of life and clean water. He said, we're Americans, we're innovative, we're hardworking, we can do these things. And President Trump has proven that. We went from being he wanted us to be energy independent. We are energy independent, but then it went to energy dominance. That is a position that we couldn't even contemplate 20 years ago. The president did, and he made good on all of those policies. He rolled back regulations while being good stewards of the environment, but we are now the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas. That means we're producing more than Russia, we're producing more than Venezuela, we're producing more than Saudi Arabia. We are dominating the global stage when it comes to energy production. And our air is cleaner, and we have the greatest access to clean water globally. And he just signed the Great Outdoors Act. We're protecting our national parks. And if you're a fan of national parks like I am, that was huge. It's the largest commitment to our national parks in U.S. history. So if you look at these two, the president is saying we can be good stewards and have a thriving economy that contributes to human flourishing and be great stewards of the environment. And AOC is saying, and Joe Biden, they're saying, well, no, Americans, you can't have it. We're gonna put you on an energy starvation diet. And God forbid you rely on power for your life. I mean, if you've got a child who needs a nebulizer, or you're some kind of a respirator or oxygen, or you have a parent, or it's you are going to struggle under the energy environmental policy of AOC and Joe Biden, because for them, they don't see it as we can do all of it. They see it as an either or choice. And they're going to make the choice for you. And it's going to be, you're not going to get the power you need to just live your life and enjoy the quality of life that we have and that so many across the globe would love to enjoy with us.
It sounds like the time that we're living in right now with the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the economic shutdown and uncertainty that's taken place as part of that would give us a sense of, if we're really looking to shut down the economy and get this Green New Deal, this is at least a small taste of what we would have to do to get there.
And you're absolutely right, Mitch, but imagine if you can't even power the internet. If you can't power the internet, you're not, for many people, they're not even earning the living that they need to make their house payment because you have no power for the internet. I mean, if you have a rolling blackout and your power is down for 6 or 8 hours, are you okay with that? Or let's say it's days at a time, or let's say you only get power from, let's say you get it 8 to 10 in the morning or 6 to 10 in the morning, and you're going to get it for a few hours in the evening. Well, what are you going to do with that power? Power up the internet, or you may have some household chores you have to finish because you finally have power. That's what an energy starvation diet looks like. I actually have a friend who is totally off the grid, did it all on his own, raging free market conservative, said, I just don't want to be attached to a central grid. So wanted to see if he can do it. Has a wind turbine, has solar panels, also has a generator to back up if everything else fails. Has a whole bank of batteries, but still has a generator if all else fails. But he'll tell you, listen, you can't use multiple appliances in my house at one time. We learn to live with it. Well, that's his choice. Imagine dictating that to an entire country. And also, here's what we will just widen that gap between the haves and the have-nots, because wealthy people will have the bank of batteries. They'll have a couple of generators. The least among us, those who cannot afford it, they're going to have to do without power. And imagine that. So what are you going to decide? I have to keep the refrigerator on so I can feed my kids, or I'm going to power up the internet and the computer or whatever else. I mean, these are real life choices. And this is what happens when you, the only thing I can think of, Mitch, is when you dislike people and you don't want them using power. that we are going, under AOC and Joe Biden, we are going to have to make do with far less electricity, far less power, and not power on demand. Just ask California. When you flip a switch and you're in the middle of a rolling blackout, your light is not coming on.
Well, we have learned why that AOC is the wrong AOC. If people want to learn more about the Right AOC, how do they find you?
Find me on Twitter at the Right AOC. You can also find me on Facebook at the Right AOC. You can also email me, therightaoc@johnlocke.org. And of course, I have a column in Carolina Journal, and I have a weekly video, The Right AOC on Point.